The soul is going to be very real. Every fighting game is frustrating. It's just facts. Every fighting game has tons of bullshit. All of them. Because that's what makes it fun, right? Fighting games would not be fun if there wasn't bullshit. Can you, like, if there was no... Misjudge the spacing. If there was no bullshit in fighting games, if it was just straight up, like, you have 6 normals and I have 6 normals and we just fight on the ground. It's so boring, right? It's like you need strong, cool, interesting tools that are frustrating but good. And the balance is between how fun it is to do the move that's cheap versus how frustrating it is to get hit by that move. And that needs to be the balance, right? That the fun of doing it versus the anger of losing to it needs to be the proper balance. If there's a move that's incredibly fun to do and is great, but it's incredibly frustrating to fight against, then you have to try to balance it out, right? There's like there's a proper way to do it, because you don't want a move to be so incredibly fun to do, but also incredibly frustrating to fight. You have to try to make it fair, right? That's how it goes. I saw Keats talking about fun versus degeneracy versus balance, and there's like an interesting conversation about it. That's like how it goes, right? Because you have to think, like, if there's some shit that's hella cheap, but it's like not the hardest thing in the world to fight against, not super frustrating, then it's not that bad, right? Because a lot of tools that are good are fun to use. Like, if you've never played a character with some cheap bullshit and it's not fun to use, then that's whack. If it's frustrating to fight against and not fun to use, then that's bad. If it's at least fun to use, that's good. Yeah, I'm sure like El Fuerte players probably had a blast doing quesadilla bombs and fucking everybody up, right? It's frustrating to fight against quesadilla bomb, but just being like boom and making people go flying, that was probably hella tight. Like, think about turnaround punch, right? Like tap from Balrog. Tap, I'm sure as a Balrog player, landing a big ass tap, you're like, damn, I feel tight as fuck. Like, you land just 7 poof, and they go flying into the atmosphere. Like, you're like, oh shit, I'm sick, right? That probably feels amazing. You probably feel great when you land a big old tap and you're like, damn, I'm tight. Like, that's tight. That is tight. That feels so good. Sin feels so good to play. Oh yeah, I can tell you right now, Zonk Knuckle was maybe fun to do, but it was a bitch to get hit by. Every time a Cody player fucking walks up to you and just goes, crap, and you just get hit by that, it feels so gross. You're like, oh, fuck. But what can you do? Raven is a good example of a character that's cheap and not cool. Elena is also a character that was very cheap and not super fun to play. She's pretty boring, but effective and cheap.